Today's story is one of the most shocking, heartbreaking, and empowering cases of modern neighborhood injustice. It begins with a new Black homeowner who moved into what he believed would be his peaceful dream community, and ends with several HOA members behind bars, exposed for one of the most coordinated acts of discrimination ever uncovered in a small neighborhood. It is worth every second. So sit back, relax, and follow along as we break down exactly how one man's courage tore down an entire corrupt HOA. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss powerful stories like this. Now, let's get into it. For Marcus Johnson, buying a home wasn't just a purchase. It was a milestone he worked toward for years. He grew up in a crowded apartment with his mother and two brothers. He spent his early adulthood working multiple jobs at once: security guard at night, warehouse worker in the morning, rideshare driver on weekends. Every dollar was saved with one purpose: to buy a place of his own. Finally, at 32 years old, Marcus closed on a beautiful two-story home in Ridgewood Estates, a suburban community with quiet streets, tall trees, friendly sidewalks, and the promise of peace. He imagined backyard barbecues. He imagined raising kids someday. He imagined neighbors waving, community events, and the simple joy of owning something he earned. But the moment he pulled up the driveway for the very first time, something felt off. Across the street, a group of 3 HOA board members stood on a yard talking. When Marcus stepped out of his car, keys dangling in his hand, excited and proud, they stopped talking. They stared. No smiles. No waves. Just cold, long, uncomfortable stares. Marcus forced a smile anyway. He raised his hand in a friendly gesture. They never waved back. He brushed it off. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was overthinking. But it wouldn't be long before he realized that moment was the first warning sign. Marcus had barely moved his furniture inside when he received an email titled, "Welcome to the neighborhood, important HOA expectations." The email was signed by the HOA president, a woman named Patricia Mercer. At first glance, the message seemed normal: rules about parking, trash cans, landscaping, noise. Except, one line stood out. "We expect all homeowners to uphold the historical character of our community." Marcus wasn't sure what that meant, but the tone felt pointed, like it wasn't just about landscaping. He replied politely, thanking them for the information. 2 hours later, another email arrived. This one was different. Short, cold, almost threatening. "We hope you will be responsive to notices. Homeowners have been removed from this community for failing to comply." Marcus raised an eyebrow. Removed? For not following HOA rules? Still, he tried to be optimistic. He told himself the HOA was just strict, not malicious. But the very next morning proved otherwise. Marcus stepped outside to head to work and froze. Taped to his front door was a bright orange notice: HOA violation, failure to maintain front lawn. Marcus stared at the yard. It was perfect. Green. Trimmed. Newly edged. He hadn't even lived there 24 hours. He walked around confused, wondering if maybe he missed something. But no, everything looked normal. He called the HOA number on the notice. No one answered. He emailed them. No reply. That evening, he finally received a short response: "Any visible imperfections constitute a violation." He didn't understand what that meant, but he paid the $50 fine just to avoid trouble. One fine wasn't a big deal, but he didn't know it was just the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus received a violation for having his trash barrel visible from the road, a violation for excessive noise when all he did was assemble furniture, a violation for improper window coverings because his curtains were the wrong shade, a violation for parking incorrectly even though his car was fully within his driveway. Altogether, almost $900 in fines. Marcus finally decided to attend an HOA meeting, just to speak, get clarity, and hopefully understand what was happening. He walked into the community center hopeful. But what happened next would change everything. The moment Marcus entered the room, all eyes turned toward him. The HOA board sat at the front: Patricia Mercer, Vice President Richard Hale, Treasurer Vanessa Crow, and 2 other board members. The meeting had barely started when Marcus raised his hand politely to ask why he was receiving so many violations. Patricia looked at him, expression stiff. "Sir," she said, "this meeting is for homeowners only." "I am a homeowner," Marcus replied calmly. Richard Hale smirked. "Are you sure about that? Rentals aren't allowed here." Marcus showed the deed paperwork he carried with him. The room went silent. Then Patricia spoke again, this time with a thin smile. "Well, welcome then. But your violations stand. This HOA has a reputation to protect." The room murmured. Marcus tried to explain that the violations seemed unfair. They cut him off multiple times. When he finished speaking, Richard leaned into his microphone. "If you can't follow the standards of this neighborhood, perhaps this community isn't the right fit for you." The tone was unmistakable. Marcus left the meeting shaking with anger, but determined. He wasn't going to let anyone run him out of a home he worked so hard to earn. But the HOA was just getting started. 3 days later, Marcus's doorbell camera captured something disturbing. At 2:17 a.m., 2 figures walked onto his property. They shined flashlights on his lawn, took pictures, and moved around his yard for several minutes before leaving. The next morning, another violation appeared. Grass height exceeds community standards by half an inch. Except Marcus had bought a brand new lawnmower 2 days earlier. His grass was perfect. He printed screenshots from the camera and sent them to the HOA. They replied in one sentence. "Homeowners are prohibited from recording HOA inspections." Marcus realized the visits weren't inspections, they were harassment. But what came next was even worse. A week later, Marcus found his mailbox smashed on the ground. 2 days after that, his backyard fence was kicked in. Then, a hateful phrase was spray-painted across the back panel of his shed. He filed police reports each time. But without identifiable faces or direct proof, officers said their options were limited. Marcus started sleeping lightly, anxious about what would happen next. He considered moving. But something in him refused to back down. He had lived there less than 2 months, and he already felt like a target. Little did he know, he wasn't the only one. One afternoon, while Marcus was repairing his fence, an older Hispanic man named Carlos walked over from down the street. He looked around nervously before speaking. "Has the HOA been bothering you?" he asked quietly. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Carlos let out a long sigh. "It happened to me too," he said. "It's why my daughter moved out. They harassed her from the day she arrived." Later that week, Marcus met 2 other neighbors. An Asian American family. A young Middle Eastern couple. Both told the same story. Constant violations, inspections at odd hours, intimidation, and pressure to sell their homes. And every single one of them fit the same pattern. They were minorities. Marcus began to realize something bigger was happening. Something planned, organized, targeted. And he was determined to expose it. Marcus started documenting everything. Every violation, every email, every recorded video, every neighbor's testimony, every suspicious incident. He created a digital folder with timestamps, pictures, videos, and witness accounts. He also bought better security cameras with night vision. Night after night, the recordings showed HOA board members, sometimes alone, sometimes in pairs, walking on his property without permission. He finally had proof. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. Late one evening, Marcus received an anonymous email. The subject line read, "They won't stop. Please read." Attached were multiple files. Internal HOA emails, group chat screenshots, financial documents, meeting notes, secret directives. And one thing was immediately clear. The HOA was targeting specific homeowners based on race and ethnicity. The messages were filled with coded language like, "We need to preserve the neighborhood's culture. We cannot let this place change. These new people don't fit the community." And even worse, some lines weren't coded at all. Marcus printed everything and shared it with the other victims. Together, they decided to take action. With everything they had collected, videos, photos, emails, and witness statements, the group hired a civil rights attorney. The attorney was stunned by the evidence. He said it was the most blatant case of targeted harassment he had ever seen. The lawsuit named HOA President Patricia Mercer, Vice President Richard Hale, Treasurer Vanessa Crowe, 2 other board members, several HOA volunteers. The claims included harassment, civil rights violations, vandalism, intimidation, trespassing, fraud, abuse of power. When the HOA received notice of the lawsuit, they panicked. But it was too late, because the police reopened Marcus's case, and this time, the whistleblower came forward publicly. The police executed a search warrant on the HOA office. What they found was shocking: financial misconduct, fake violation fees, secret meeting recordings, racially targeted homeowner lists, plans to pressure certain families into selling. Several board members were arrested. Richard denied everything. Vanessa cried on camera as officers escorted her out. But the evidence was overwhelming. The community watched as their once feared HA leaders were walked into police cars in handcuffs. Marcus felt justice, but also sadness. Why had it come to this? Why had a place meant to be peaceful become a battlefield? The courtroom was packed. Marcus sat with the other victims in the front row. When the prosecutor presented the recordings, the emails, the surveillance footage, and the whistleblower testimony, the jury looked horrified. The HOA's own documents destroyed their defense. During the trial, it became clear the board had a long-standing pattern of targeting minority homeowners, issuing false violations, manipulating property values, forcing unwanted families to sell, pocketing illegal fines. The judge did not hold back. In her final words, she said, "This is one of the most disturbing abuses of neighborhood authority this court has ever seen." Sentences were handed down. Patricia Mercer, 7 years. Richard Hale, 6 years. Vanessa Crowe, 5 years. Others received 2 to 4 years, depending on involvement. The HOA was dissolved permanently. The victims were awarded financial compensation. And a new, fair, community-run council replaced the old system. Months later, the community looked completely different. Neighbors smiled again. Voices filled the sidewalks. Children played in yards without fear. People felt safe. And Marcus? He still lives in the same house. The house he earned. The house he fought for. He planted new flowers. He repainted his fence. He hosts weekend barbecues with the neighbors who stood by him. Marcus didn't just protect his home. He protected everyone's. He stood up against an entire system. And won. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. This case proves that courage, unity, and persistence can break even the strongest walls of corruption. If you found this story powerful, eye-opening, or inspiring, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and help more viewers find stories like this. See you in the next video.